Hi, everyone. I'm Karen. Have you ever felt like someone you trusted was hiding a secret from you that would flip your life upside down? Well, imagine that person was your own mom. A week ago, that's exactly what happened to me. It was truly one of the hardest, saddest days of my life. You see, what I discovered was not just something horrible, it was something that made me feel like my whole life has been one big lie. Everything started the day I was searching for tools in our garage that could help me with my chemistry project. Suddenly, a heavy box fell on my toes. I screamed in pain, but when I looked down, I noticed that the box had broken into pieces. Typical! As I removed the old dusty things from the box, I realized what I was seeing was much more valuable than I thought. The box was full of interesting stuff. There were old pictures of my mom from the time when she was a university student. And then there was a picture of her carrying a child, standing next to a man. I didn't recognize the man or the child. I mean, I had no brothers or sisters, and the man wasn't familiar to me. Another interesting thing I found was an old voice recording machine which had written on it, "Dear Karen and Michael," which made me even more surprised and curious. I hid the recorder in my clothes and sneaked into the house. On my way to my room, I had so many questions running through my head. Who was the child in the pictures? What's on the voice recorder? Who was Michael? All of a sudden, I felt like I was in a thriller movie, playing the role of the heroine spy who wanted to break the code in order to solve the puzzle. The puzzle which I had stumbled upon in the form of those pictures and the voice recorder. I got to my room and tried to play the voice recorder. I kept pressing buttons, but nothing was happening. Finally, I pressed the right button, and my mom's voice started talking. My heart began to race. The more I listened, the more I felt that my mother was like a stranger to me, living a life that I'd had absolutely no clue about. She had this whole other secret life, and I couldn't stop myself from feeling angry and upset. To me, my mom was a very ordinary girl who'd studied in a prestigious university. But then, things had gotten tough when in her last year, she was diagnosed with liver cancer, which forced her to drop out. Her life as she'd known it was over, and she lost all her hair due to the chemotherapy. Unfortunately, the treatment didn't help her, and as a last resort, she had to undergo a serious operation. Luckily, the operation was a success, and she defeated cancer. As her life began to normalize, she met my father, and they got married. And then I popped into the world. My mom always feared that the cancer might return one day, and so she'd recorded her will for me on that voice recorder. I have no idea why she'd keep this a secret, though. It just seemed selfish of her. I always thought of her as such a brave woman, but after finding the recording, I was shocked. I understood that she probably didn't want to talk about these parts of her life with me because it would make her sad. But she should never have kept such a big secret from me. That I had a brother? Yes, that's right. A brother who had a different dad from me. The name on the voice recorder next to mine was none other than my brother's who, up until that day, I didn't even know existed. Imagine how frustrating it was for me to find out like this. I was seriously furious at her. And then, in the voice recording, she goes on to say, "Dear Karen, I love you and your brother so much. I wish both of you could be together, but unfortunately, that is just too difficult. I have hidden his existence from you to protect you both, but I do not want to die and bury the secret with me." Can you believe that? I was in a state of shock. My heart was beating so loud. It was the only thing I could hear. Finding out I had a brother that I hadn't known about before was just insane. All those exciting feelings I'd felt earlier of being in a thriller film were suddenly flipped on their head, and I felt like I was stuck in a sad, gloomy film that would never have a happy ending. After several hours of inner conflict, I decided to go confront my mom with her secret. I wanted her to confess. I began to think about the best way to approach it. Finally, dinner time came, and it was time for me to take action and implement all the scenarios I had been cooking up in my mind. I sat down at the table with my mom and dad. I looked at my dad with pitiful eyes, as he did not know that my mom, his deceptive wife, had cheated on him. I looked at my mom's face, which suddenly looked like a mask, hiding her true, evil face. The moment had come to confront her and rip that mask off. I banged my fist on the table. My parents looked at me in surprise. I started shouting so loudly that for a moment, I thought that all the glasses on the table would shatter. "How could you be so selfish?" I screamed. "How have you been able to lie to us all these years? I know your secret and I will tell everyone. I know I have a brother named Michael." As soon as I said my brother's name, tears replaced my anger, and I couldn't take it anymore. All the questions that I had planned to ask drifted away. In a low and trembling voice, with my eyes filled with tears, I said, "Where is he now? How old is he?" The only thing I could think of was my brother and his whereabouts. But my mom just kept her head down, looking at her plate silently, her eyes filled with sorrow. She did not answer any of my questions. My dad got up and put his hand on my shoulder to calm me down and comfort me, but I pushed him away. As I ran to my room, I told my mom that she owed me an explanation about everything that had happened. I closed the door to my room and waited to hear my father screaming at her. But it didn't happen. Instead, I heard them both leave the house. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching my room. My mom opened the door, turned on the light, and sat next to me. In her hand, she had some old pictures, the same pictures that I had found in the garage. My father was standing in the hall, leaning against the wall, waiting for her to talk to me. And in a faint but firm voice, she said to me, "I will explain everything." She then went on to tell me that when she was at university, she'd been in love with a guy named Adam, who she'd met at a lecture. And very quickly, she began to feel like he was the man of her dreams, that she'd be with forever. He was polite and handsome, and pretty soon, she fell pregnant. They started planning their life together, but things didn't quite turn out like they'd expected. After giving birth to Michael, my mom got diagnosed with liver cancer, which changed everything. Her health was a disaster, and so she had to drop out of university. Everything started falling apart. Adam wasn't very responsible and cared more about having fun with his friends than looking after her in the hospital. My mom decided to separate from and raise Michael on her own. She would fight this illness by herself, no matter what. But then she got even more sick, and as she lay on her deathbed, she realized that Michael deserved more, and she let Adam have custody of him. Life took another turn, and she survived the cancer. She'd been given another chance. It took her 3 long years after the separation to fully recover. But by then, Adam already had another woman in his life. They were married and raising Michael as their son, just like a normal child, as per my mother's desires. After getting discharged from the hospital, she tried communicating with Adam and met him for coffee. Adam had mixed feelings upon seeing my mom. He was happy as well as surprised. My mom asked him about Michael and said that she would like to see him. Adam became very worked up on hearing this and forbade her to see Michael, as he was worried that after so long, how could they tell him that he has a different mother? How could they explain to him everything that had happened? He was still very young and would not understand the situation. Adam was afraid that Michael would start hating both of them, my mom for abandoning him and Adam for hiding the truth from him for so long. Finally, after thinking deeply about it all, they made the decision that after Michael turned 18, Adam would tell him everything that had happened and that his mom was still alive. Maybe then he'd not be so angry because he'd be older and understand it better. As my mom told me all this, she held my hand and looked into my eyes with affection and continued, "My dear daughter, situations arise in life that we can't always be prepared for. The world is a place of uncertainty, and we need to be able to adapt easily if we want to enjoy our time here. Even though life took my son from me, She gave me your loving father, and she gave me you." Her eyes were filled with tears of sorrow and joy at the same time. I could feel her pain and relate to the emotion she had been through, and I felt so stupid for having shouted at her. I can't believe I accused her of being selfish, when in fact, she was the exact opposite. She had sacrificed so much. I hugged her tightly and I cried. I was sad for her and for my brother. While my mom and I looked at the pictures, I turned to her and said, "Mom, I want to meet him." She didn't reply, so I thought maybe she hadn't heard me, and I repeated the question. Suddenly she said, "No," in a sharp tone, and left the room. I didn't understand. Hadn't I been through enough today? And yet she still wanted to keep us separate? It was hopeless. I put my head in my hands, and my dad came over to me and explained why my mom had behaved like this. He started telling me how my mom had tried to communicate with Michael when he reached the age of 18, but it hadn't gone well. Michael had shouted at her and said that she was selfish and irresponsible, and that he'd never forgive her and his dad for keeping such a big secret from him. He continued telling me that from time to time, my mom was worried about the moment I'd find out because she was worried I'd react the same, and she couldn't bear to lose me in the same way she'd lost Michael. I felt so bad. I had reacted in the same way, but I still had a chance to make it up to her. My mom was an amazing woman, despite hiding the secret from us. She did it to protect us. I went downstairs to hug her and reassure her that I'd never leave her side. I wish this was where the problems ended, but it wasn't. I needed to find a way to fix this pain that my mom was feeling. I decided I'd find my brother myself. I started looking for his Facebook page, and I found more than one person with the same name as him, but it was obvious which one he was. He looked exactly like my mom. I gathered all my courage and sent him a message. "Hi, I'm Karen, and I'm your sister. There's a lot that I want to talk to you about. Maybe we can meet face to face?" After an hour of persuasion, he agreed to meet me in a coffee shop. At first, we just sat in silence. It was surreal to know that this guy that looked so much like my mom was my brother. I told him everything, from the moment I found the voice recording until the confrontation with our mom. I didn't expect him to listen to the end, especially as I was crying so much. But what happened next surprised me. After I finished crying, he told me that when my mother tried to contact him, he hadn't been in the right frame of mind to let her explain everything. He just felt angry. But now, after hearing everything from me, he agreed to meet her and forgive her. In the end, it all worked out. My brother has a good heart, just like my mom. And just as my mom never gave up on fighting cancer, I guess she never really gave up on us either. Today, after all this time, I feel like the happiest girl on earth. I have a healthy mom, a dad, and now a brother too. Did you like my story? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this